back to the Nutrimedical Report. I hope that hour was interesting with Professor McCanney. We have joining us John, our amazing engineer who's developed, for the first time in history, the monoatomic Tesla-activated iodine, Nutriodine, the only incarnation, the only way on Earth to make this very powerful, amazing, probably the most important nutraceutical I've ever actually dealt with. I call it the resurrection of mitochondria, if you want to call it the most important probably discovery in terms of regenerating tissues, and killing off pathogens, restoring redox potential, and literally reversing the effects of not only scalar radiation, but also reversing the effects of the mitochondrial apocalypse caused by Fukushima and just general pollution and mineral depletion. So welcome back to the program, John.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
John, tell us a little bit, without giving some of your secrets away, some of the background of just, without too many details, exactly how powerful and how unique the iodine that you make for us here at Nutrimedical is. Yes. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of what we call Me Too products out there. And I'm really disturbed by the fact that there's a lot of unqualified people who don't know the medical, the plasma physics, the scientific side, and of course your engineering principles and expertise are unique. It's not an easy process to make what you do. I mean, it's actually quite dangerous because of the power involved and the kinds of fields involved and the care in order to actually create this. So people have asked questions about where do you get your iodine? Well, it's reagent grade crystalline iodine first, which absolutely has no heavy metals. If it was from seaweed, it would have heavy metals, or if it was any other form mined at the bottom of the ground, some pit, it's going to have heavy metals in it. It cannot be in its monatomic plasma activated form unless it's put through a very powerful and very specific Tesla field. And if people don't have the specific knowledge how to do that, there's just no way that they're going to produce a product that's like this. If you give regular iodine, like iodides, to people, like in glycerin, like a product that I know that's out there, it's very toxic. You can actually cause someone to go into hypothyroidism. You actually shut off their thyroid and their mitochondrial metabolism. Right. It can cause neuropathy. It can cause cardiac conduction problems and other problems. Nutrimedicine does the opposite. You can put it on a burn, like our young girl with a third-degree burn we talked about a few weeks ago, and her actual tissue will regenerate right down from bone. You can see it. I've used it on myself on areas where I look, and within an hour you see healing. You say, that's amazing how fast it's healing. You can literally see it healing almost while you're looking at it. And I use the Nutrimedical in my Sinupulse Elite irrigator. I use it in my HydroFloss irrigator for my teeth to, HydroFloss which changes the charge of the particles of the water and so on. I use Nutridine in the bath water a lot of times. I use it everywhere. I mean, I have a glass of water on my desk. Most of the time I have it loaded up with Nutridine, so I'm sipping on Nutridine and water all day long. Yeah. I can tell you, if you're wanting to restore tissues or health, the most important thing is to keep your mitochondria in a high redox state to detox from halides, chloride, fluoride, and bromide. So tell us a little bit of the secrets, without too many deep secrets, yes, of just how powerful this is and how unique it is.
It's very unique. It was a discovery based on Edgar Cayce's suggestion, and it was the most powerful thing he could come up with for helping the human body. He recommended it thousands of times, and it's just as effective today as it was then. Even it's much more effective.
Well, the one he made was he wasn't able to get the science there. I think your phone is a little bit modulated too. I guess maybe on the next break we'll try to reconnect.
Okay.
But tell us more about when he used it. He did have effects at his clinic, but he never had the power to have an engineer that designed it the way he prophetically interpreted it as to be. And there was various engineers, like I think there was an Indian chemist engineer years ago who tried to do it, and he never really succeeded in creating the fully activated Tesla activated monoatomic form. It has a different electromagnetic signature, which means it's in a completely different plasma state. Right.
And it's so effective. It is used around the world for malaria, fishing, chikungunya, dengue fever, things like that. but those are just the hardest things. The things we have to deal with are lesser levels than those life-threatening ones. So it's very effective on cuts, burns, infections, any type of use that we have, and especially for thyroid, internal uses, it works wonders. Really does.
One of the things that Dr. Broda Barnes discovered is every single person has heart disease of any kind, hypertension, vascular disease, stroke, deep vein thrombosis. Every single one has hypometabolism. Now, there's a number of different forms of hypothyroidism. You have autoimmune, where you have antibodies against the thyroglobulin and the microsomal fraction. You've got TRS, thyroid resistance syndrome, where you get leptin, insulin, and thyroid conversion resistance. And that's in pre-diabetics and anybody with elevated blood insulin and leptin resistance. And then you have a situation where there's just resistance because there's mineral deficiency. You don't have the proper minerals. There's 7 minerals necessary to activate T4 to T3. What Nutridyne does is it revs up everything.
Yes.
As I mentioned before, heart disease, when we look at hypertension, it's basically the secondary wave of your mitochondria in your blood vessel walls that create a peristaltic wave to push the blood around your circulatory system, your arteries and your veins. It's basically mitochondrial dysfunction. In fact, if you look at the underlying illnesses that result from, say, diabetes or prediabetes or elevated insulin resistance, they're all mitochondrial dysfunction. So every single person that develops a health problem, including even the process of aging itself, in a sense, to a great extent, it's a mitochondrial dysfunction. And it's a dysfunction of the loss of the extracellular matrix to be able to take that energy and then differentiate the cells and make stem cells turn into new cells and get rid of old damaged ones. So Nutridyne even stimulates apoptosis. It gets rid of old damaged cells and stimulates and provides the energy for new cells to differentiate and become the new myocytes from muscles, the new neurocytes from nerves, etc. So Nutridyne is pretty unique. And when we add it to our mitochondrial support formulas like mitocarnitine, which is now we've upgraded to our VascuCare. We've dropped mitocarnitine. We now have just a straight propionyl carnitine, which is real powerful. To IBS Care, to CoQ10 Supreme, which is the only non-crystallizing CoQ10, to CoQ10 Supreme Ubiquinol, to uridine, which is triacetyl uridine for stimulating mitochondrial function. But the most important of all is Nutridyne. It's just amazing. And
one thing
I'm constantly surprised at how many things it'll do.
Yes, it's one thing you would want with you if you were ever out in the woods to have when no other medicines were available. Nutridyne would do it.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, whether you have periodontal disease, or you've got a fractured bone that's sticking out of your leg, or you've got a big laceration, Nutridyne is the thing you want to have. In fact, it's interesting. I was running around here between one show and the other, and I bumped my knee. And what I'm doing right now is putting a couple drops of Nutridyne on it. And that will probably be healed by this evening. That's how fast it heals. And I'm 63, so that's not normal. It'll actually be healed and closed and sealed up by this evening. What do you think of all of the other, what I call scamtastic statements made by other manufacturers or people that are trying to flog their iodine? What kind of things are they saying, and what are the defects in their logic, John? And I guess if we don't get into it fully this segment, we'll get into the next one maybe when we reconnect.
Yes. Some people believe a simple copper wire run through the iodine will change it, but it will not. It requires the Tesla field to do the real work. The iodine molecule is very difficult to separate, and they just can't do it with the copper wire.
It takes a lot of energy, and it has a special field effect to do so. When we come back, we'll hear more from John, hopefully with a little better connection so you can hear him real clearly. Back in just a minute with our amazing engineer that makes Nutridyne, the most powerful and important nutraceutical we have at Nutrimedical. Back in just a moment. John, I want to go over some of the latest points in terms of how important iodine is. Iodine literally drives your mitochondria to what's called aerobic metabolism, using oxygen. And iodine helps prevent not only hyperthyroidism, but also hypo. It helps synthesize thyroid hormone. It helps also peripheral conversion by stimulating the 5'-deiodinase. And it blocks the reverse, which is what's called a 5-deiodinase that creates reverse thyroid hormone that actually shuts off your metabolism. It also supports apoptosis. Apoptosis is where your body's getting rid of old or damaged cells and replacing them with new healthy ones. In fact, it's interesting that if you have iodine deficiency in utero, you get cretinism. In the elderly people, hypothyroidism is rampant. It's a major cause of what we call a decrease or hypoapoptosemia, which basically means you're not getting rid of old damaged cells, so they accumulate and more your tissues and organs become senescent. And John, I'm just going through some of this list of major functions of iodine, and you're mentioning some of the unique. We were talking about some of the unique. Still sounds kind of funny there, like a wah, 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 wah. Oh, is it ever strange, like an echo? That's
I'm sorry, I don't know how to solve it. Yes.
Oh, I can hear you better though. I can hear you a lot better, even though there's kind of like a background. Well, it sounds good.
Okay.
What I want you to do is kind of respond to some of the I call it the scamtastic. How can I say it? Statements that people are making that are marketing alternative forms of iodine. They're, iodine is some kind of something for shielding the thyroid or whatever, or they're using old iota caps or iodoral. Iodoral, of course, was developed by a Frenchman, I think, over about 130, 140 years ago.
Yes.
It's a long time ago. And people, and of course, it's very ancient. It's old. And people don't realize that potassium iodate, even the government had to actually block its sale online because people were going to be taking it by the 7th or 8th day. If they're taking the dosage even recommended to block radioiodine 131, they're going to get toxic. So what are the kind of usual statements they make, and how would you counter those statements?
I would warn people, be careful, very careful. Get any kind of help you can if you're going to take one of those, because they're very dangerous. Ours is taken at hundreds of drops a day and no side effects with no other products.
Right. In fact, I had a member about 2 years ago. I had a little girl who literally took an entire bottle of Nutrimedical, and she was only like 2 or 3 years of age, and drank the whole darn thing. Now, obviously, it's that not bad tasting, because regular iodine tastes awful.
Yes.
But Nutrimedical doesn't. I mean, I have a glass of it sitting in my water. I have the pure water system water with Nutrimedical. It's very pleasant. It's like, wow, that's not bad at all. And
no, it's not.
She drank the whole bottle.
It works well, but you would not ever want to take that much unless you were facing malaria or something very severe.
Yeah, but it didn't.
Usually,
but she was fine though.
Smaller amounts. Several times a day are the best way to use it.
So what kind of statements do they make that you find, other than just a general warning, maybe I can help you a bit. The first thing I'd tell people is, number one, most other forms of iodine have a ceiling that if you take too much, you're going to get toxic and you shut off your thyroid and mitochondria. They will not flush your body of fluoride, chloride, or bromide because they don't have the high enough energetic form of iodine. In this higher energy state, it's able to actually get rid of these other halides. Whereas Nutrimedical will do it, but other ones won't. So that's one of the things that I would say.
They have the energy to kick them out of the body. They basically have a energy when they react. They give off a burst of energy. It's very effective.
Now, the other thing that's interesting about Nutrimedical is it's the only thing that will decalcify the pineal gland. And I mentioned this, I have a lot of people asking about it. Now, they need to understand the nature of what we are as beings. We are a tripartite being. We are made with a physical body that's in the lower 5 dimensions. The 5th dimension, CERN is studying at the Higgs, what's called the Higgs field, which is a gravitonic field that makes wormholes. And I mentioned on the show yesterday with J.D. Moore, one of the projects that CERN is doing in the government is they have deep space, what's called gravitonic telescopy. In other words, they're not just looking at other things, they're actually able to map out the galaxy to look at the specific wormholes or time-space discontinua that allow you to jump across the galaxy. They're also looking at gravity waves from deep space objects, because for every star in our galaxy, and there's 240 billion, there's 10,000 dwarf stars, or large planetoid-like comets, that are the size of Venus or larger. And people aren't aware that only 10% of these are entrained even in a hyperelliptical orbit. What Nutrimedical does is it literally decalcifies the pineal gland because it's connected to the higher spiritual part of what we are, our soul, which is equivalent to our mind. Our mind doesn't exist in our physical body. But people know that with near-death experiences. Your mind is connected to your physical body through the pineal gland and the basal nuclei, through the magnetite particles that are, we call the torsion field translators of higher dimensional negentropic, you call signals from your higher self to your physical body, I call your sensory pod. And the only thing that decalcifies that gland is Nutrimedical. The only thing. You can do things to help grab it once you're decalcified, such as our Nutridefense, which has the anhydrous catechin, which is very powerful, and our xenoestrogen detox. But top in that triad is Nutridine, Nutridefense, and then xenoestrogen detox. And then, of course, methylation pathway, the support like samethyl, bio-LVR, superfolate, and pyromethyl B12. This is really important because what's happening is the whole world is being polluted to not only destroy their mitochondria, but to calcify their pineal gland, turning human beings literally into zombies because basically a truncated biological machine where the core to living waters, the silver cord, is already cut or destroyed or damaged in some way. So what people find is when they start taking Nutridine, they have much more vivid dreams. Their intellect and the IQ is much higher, they're much more creative, but they have a higher level of what they call spirituality. The same way we amplify that too with Indiamese, which increases the nucleoplasm mineral concentration, so you have higher Kmax of enzymes that regulate neurotransmitter levels, so you have a clearer, if you will call sensory and motor and brain function. But Nutridine, I call it the, if there's a vibrational frequency for every mineral in the chakra energy points in the body, the highest one is the vibrational frequency of Nutridine that connects the mind, literally, which is your soul, to your physical body. That's how important it is. So
it is truly essential that people use this and use it wisely, because the endocrine system is so essential to the way our whole body works, our minds, our feelings, everything is connected, and this needs to be healthy and needs to be whole and working well.
Every gland in your system is dependent on iodine too. Yeah, every gland in your system, whether it's your adrenal glands require iodine, your thyroid, your sex and male hormone, female hormone generation, everything, including infertility, is tied back to iodine.
Yes.
And it also prevents things like fibrocystic breast disease, endometriosis. It helps reverse insulin resistance in diabetics, supports protein synthesis, stimulates the global protection of your body against radiation, not just radioiodine, but all radioisotopes and scalar pollution like smart meters. By the way, we have a new technology that we're going to be launching here from a manufacturer in Vancouver that has the first and only low-frequency kilohertz blocking technology. But Nutridine is that important that every person and every pet, every animal should be on Nutridine in our world to protect their mitochondria and their higher spiritual self. Back to the Nutrimedical report. And by the way, there's no such thing as a stupid question. You can call at any time, 800-259-5791. Welcome back, Bobby Walton. And, of course, Alamax and Alamed are our target. I was just talking just in the break, Bobby, about how many birds there are dead from the H5N1 flu and these new recombinant strains that we know are probably weaponized. But they now have got here, and they're wiping out in Minnesota and Iowa and other places, not only chickens and turkeys. I think they're approaching 20 million turkeys now that are dead in just last few weeks from this, or have been purposely killed because they're infected. And the numbers are pretty close in chickens, too. There's one farm, for example, I believe it is in Iowa, I think that has chicken farms. And I think that Iowa, they have 58 million laying hens in one farm. The entire farm, 10% of the crop of chickens that lay eggs was wiped. One farm. I think it's something like 5.8 million just in one farm alone. What's going on now is we're not just seeing that in birds. We're seeing also viruses, tuberculosis, TB, bacteria. Everything is massively increasing since last year, and we're not even fully through the year. There's been a doubling of worldwide pathogens, and we're getting more and more deadly strains that carry human receptor binding gene changes, such as some of these flu strains are not only infect birds but can infect humans. So we're on the edge of a super plague of one and multiple pathogens. To me, the first question I'd ask is, why doesn't the bird industry that has eggs or whatever, why don't they put Alamax in their feed? Why? It's non-toxic. It can never develop resistance. Just like, why don't you give it to your child when they're going to school or daycare? Daycare is a cesspool. I mean, if you were to go around with blood agar plates and culture and do viral plates on all the magazines in the doctor's office waiting room, or in the play area of a daycare, it's crazy. You'd walk in one of these what we call level 4 biohazard suits if you had any brains. And people don't understand that every day you fly in an aircraft. I just spoke to Sid Roth, who was going to come in on Thursday, but he's so busy he's going to reschedule for a week or so. He has a ministry. It's a miracle. It's a miracle you don't get sick when you fly. And he did get sick. He went to Israel, came back sick as a dog. And I told him, I said, right away, you should be on things like our Almax Alamet. And the reason is, if you take these things, you make your bullet cell bulletproof from these bad bugs. Nanobacteria that grow around your gums and can rot your teeth out of your head and create pockets. The same nanobacteria can rot your arteries and give you a stroke, a heart attack, or a deep vein thrombosis. And the same types of pathogens, stealth ones like, cytomegalovirus and all kinds of other organisms, can cause all kinds of havoc in your genes, turning on genes to create cancer, autoimmune disease, and so on. So it's not a benign thing. So when you start taking Alamax, you're doing what we call cellular hygiene. You clean out the rat's nest of bad pathogens waiting in the wings to your genetics, make your bodies attack your own tissues. So, Bobby, what do you think of that? I mean, it's pretty scary when you hear about how many turkeys and chickens. By the way, the cost and the effect in the population is going to be enormous. But why don't they use Alamax? I don't understand. If there's anybody in the animal husbandry business, whether it's cattle or sheep or chickens, because we're big chicken eaters here in North America, and why don't they use it? I mean, why would they even think of putting drugs in which don't work or they develop drug resistance? You can't develop drug resistance to Alamax. So if you give it to your child, you're not going to increase the 400 to 500% increase in risk of autism. They've proven if you give conventional antibiotics to a child that has recurring otitis media or tonsillitis, you increase the risk of autism 400 to 500%. Not so with Alamax. So what's your feedback on that?
I mean, the world is a pretty scary place, and I agree with you. Everybody should be taking Alamax as a prevention for themselves and for a way to stay healthy. With all the slaughtering that you were talking about and, everything crisscrossing the globe and people traveling in airplanes, you're talking about your health. So it's like, do you want to wake up tomorrow?
Right.
Do you want to be healthy? Or, are you not really interested? I mean, Allison is one way.
Yeah, the average person that takes Allison doesn't realize just how much healthier they're going to be. The average American gets food poisoning alone, let alone all the travel, but food poisoning at least 6 times a year. That's usually from something like birds that have got Staph aureus or some other organism growing in them, like chickens or turkeys. Oftentimes it's bad fish that carries, Vibrio or other organisms growing in it because it's not fresh. Or beef, because it's, the animals have been sick and then they're slaughtered after they have their own health problems. And we don't have a healthy environment. So you've got a weakened population of people that are demineralized, that are toxically loaded up with everything from Fukushima Daiichi to stack vaccines. And then you expose them to pathogens and animals that are kept in what I call obscene cages and close quarters that increase the chances of cross-contamination and infection. And they're often given antibiotics. They're snuck into their feed, which creates resistant superbacteria and other pathogens. And our defense is, for God's sake, take Alamax. I mean, whether it's giving it to your newborn baby or yourself if you travel, or if you're in a big office in the cubicle, or you get in the subway, or I guess in Chicago you get, is it what they call it, the L train? Is it, what is it, that above ground train that flies around Chicago?
The L train. The L train that we have up here because it's elevated.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Chicago is kind of a very neat city, very unique city. But when you go on these trains or subways, you're just sucking in all the air, everybody else that's coughing, sneezing, and passing gas, etc. And whatever pathogens they have, they're going to give to you free. And nowadays, people don't realize, all you got to do is touch a mirror or a door handle or the edge of a counter and then rub your eye, and you got it. You don't even have to put it in your mouth. Or you touch a piece of food and you put it in your mouth after you have, let's say, a donut or a bagel or something. And if you have the Alamax in your system, your dentist is going to say, hey, you stop making plaque now. Now, by the way, we're going to launch a new probiotic, dental probiotic for getting rid of problems, but you have to have the antipathogenics. I had a lady yesterday who asked, how do I get rid of this horrible, gut problems? Massively bad constipation, really bad bloating, dysbiosis in her gut. And one of the first things I told her, I said, you need to be on Alamax. Because when you take this, you're going to start clearing out the bad pathogens, take that along with berberstatin. Then you recolonize with Living Probiotic and Living Probiotic Ultra. But the nice thing about Alamax is it penetrates through the biofilm. And biofilm basically is the bacteria create this protective film so that ordinary antibiotics and drugs can't even get through it. Alamax goes through it like it's not even there, which is really cool. It means that if you're taking it, it's going to cross the blood-brain barrier to stop your brain from reactivating a virus you get when you're a child vaccine, or deep areas of your lung to get chronic lung disease and thick, gooey mucus like cystic fibrosis or COPD, or you've got, big, thick plaque in your arteries that, is a festering mess with nanobacteria there ready to break off and create an embolus, which is called a stroke or heart attack. People don't understand a propagating clot is called a heart attack or stroke. And it's a festering mess of nanobacteria and other pathogens growing in your artery wall from dead monocytes called foam cells and the other oxidized fatty acids. We know what causes all these things, but people forget that there's almost every disease, including cancer, there's a bug of some kind of weird kind. Virus, mycobacteria, all kinds of different weird, I call pathogen soup. And Alamax is like a universal cleaner. It gets rid of the pathogen soup, doesn't it?
Pathogen soup, that's an interesting thing that I've never heard anybody say before, but I kind of like that.
I'm always thinking of new metaphors. Yeah, I'm going to think of new metaphors because then people don't need to get technical. They don't need to know why the cleaner works, let's say, to make their windows look so wonderful. This is the cleaner for your cells. And if you just take a little narrow-spectrum antibiotic or an antiviral, most of these, by the way, drugs like the antivirals are so darn toxic. I got a consult yesterday and over the weekend of a little young baby that got encephalomyelitis. And I told him, this when you're taking things that go through the blood-brain barrier like Alamax and Alamed, you can protect yourself. So we have three major ones. We have Nutridyne, Silver 100, and Alamax. The Alamax is so safe and non-toxic. I tell people, if your child's prone to recurring infections or if you're prone to otitis media or sinus, if you're not taking Alamax, why? And why are they not using it in the chicken and the turkey industries? Because this fall, if we don't, we're not going to have turkey to cut up on the Thanksgiving dinner plate. So if you're listening out there and you grow turkeys, call Bobby for some Alamax.
Get your Alamax today.
Do you have difficulty taking supplements?
I want to make here. The first is that we had our lady on from Go Healthy Next with the ozone generator. We actually have a better machine that's going to be available here very shortly that generates ozone at a much better cost. We also have a separate plasma air filtration system that's going to be also at a much better cost and much more advanced. That'll be launching shortly. I'm looking at launching a device also that will measure your microcapillary circulatory patterns. It's far more accurate than blood pressure for looking at your circulation. You can literally do at home. That'll be coming up as well. And we're going to be launching in probably about, I'd say, 2 months, a new nutraceutical that has the capacity to transfer to your immune system better than vaccines, the actual transfer factors and immune memory to fight all the major 26 pathogens that affects humans. That'll be available in about 2 months, and that's coming. This week, we're actually going to have the amazing new nutraceutical, Sport Energy Lights, and I have a glass of it sitting on my desk all the time now, and I mix it with Brain Mag during the day, and after 7 p.m. I switch to use Brain Mag with the Calm Mind to start winding things down. This is so energizing and stimulatory and great for just getting everything done. Electrolytes protecting your oxidative stress in your body, providing all the nutrients. It's amazing. So, by the way, any of our products that we have, quote, discontinued specific flavors, if you request that you want that, you have to purchase at least half a dozen. We can get those special ordered for you. So if in discontinued products, if you're concerned, like, oh, Dr. Deagle doesn't have flavor anymore, like chocolate mint of the glycemics, we can special order. We can have a special order in for you. Freed, we're back, and we're going to talk about Cardiovasc. And by the way, I just announced that I actually have a tap now on a device that can measure people's circulatory capacity they'll be able to do at home. The device that was out of a company out of Houston was a kind of a knockoff of a more advanced machine developed in China. And I've managed to track down a device that people can purchase at a reasonable cost that they can actually measure their own circulatory capacity that's better than their own or their doctor's blood pressure measurements. As I mentioned before, if you look teleologically at what blood pressure is, which is based on Korotkov sounds from going back several hundred years ago, it's not a direct measure of perfusion. Capillary Blanche test that measures the return of blood in your nail beds, developed by a Swiss physician several centuries ago, is more accurate, but the most accurate are the technologies developed in China for measuring microcirculation, and the knockoff of that was developed, and it's about $17,000 a device for doctors' offices, developed here in America. Very, very accurate, but very expensive and not portable. What we want is something portable that can actually tell people, am I perfusing? Which is better. In other words, your dad used that term when he developed Cardivite, which is now called Cardiovasc, and for us here in Nutrimedical. And Cardiovasc literally restores perfusion, which means when you restore perfusion, your blood pressure lowers because your heart says, hey, I don't need to pump so hard because the body's getting perfused. The brain gets perfused, so your brain wakes up and people say, gee, I can remember my recipe cards, or I remember where my keys are, I remember all my grandchildren's names. Their kidneys get perfused, so their kidney function, if they're diabetic or have had previous insults from, say, cytotec and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and damage their kidneys, the kidney function starts to improve because they're perfusing their kidneys, which is why the American College of Surgeons and the cardiologists last year came out with a very major study that said if you overtreat blood pressure to lowering it below 160/90 in people over 60, you better watch it because you can actually cause them to go to renal failure and stop perfusing their brain or push them into heart failure by reducing even perfusion of their heart muscle because you drop the blood pressure too fast and their perfusion drops like a rock. So that's pretty exciting, isn't it, Fareed?
It is.
Now, people need to understand this. What we're talking about is I'm moving the science of medicine forward, and when I release my book, which will hopefully be by this 4th of July, the book, Dr. You, is going to change medicine and change health and change wellness forever for the rest of mankind. Forever. And that's a big boast, but I can tell you I can prove it. And when we look at the wellness conditions every day, I'm going to expand it dramatically in the book. And you're going to see a lot of everything. And, of course, what we're going to do in the book, the ebook version, will also have direct hyperlinks. So you can hit the ebook links and see video clips and other material. So it won't just be a book. It's going to have video, audio. It'll have everything in it. And, of course, we'll have a print version that'll be on ring-bound. So you have a ring-bound version, and you can actually, copy those links over if you have a computer. But if you have the ebook version, you can actually just hit the hyperlink, and it'll take you directly to the other material. Let's go through some of the components in cardiovascular and explain to people why it's restoring perfusion, why it's removing heavy metals, why it's restoring nitric oxide, why it's rebalancing the autonomic nervous system, why it's literally killing off nanobacteria and restoring the health of the arterial or intimal artery wall and the venous wall, and why it reduces things like inflammatory C-reactive protein and fixes a lot of other things like your microcirculation of your nerves. For example, most people don't realize that in diabetics, the reason why they get neuropathy, the increase in cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha caused by their microcirculation crashing around the vasa nervorum of their nerves, the blood supply to the nerves. So when you take Cardivite, you're actually preventing yourself from developing 1 in 20 diabetics over 20 years will get a horrifying pain syndrome I call a suicidal level of pain. So what's in Cardivite and Cardiovasc, now we call it, Cardiovasc. What's in it that helps all these things? Let's go through the components.
Sure. It's a combination of 7 botanical ingredients, botanical extracts that my dad selected to help the cardiovascular system. So the first of these is hawthorn, and we use a leaf and flower extract. And the Barker compound we look for is called Vitexin. We make sure that it's at a level of 1.8%. We do that with high-pressure chromatography, and it is used for the heart muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so let's go through the components you have are different than these knockoff companies like Extendivite, Heart and Body, Strauss Heart Drops. They're all trying to copy it, but they don't have the technology to, number one, check every batch with high-pressure chromatography, use the right components of the plant, which is backed by the research, and actually have the levels of the nutraceutical molecules present in every batch that's consistent. Like when you have a drug made by a drug company or a knockoff, we call it generic, it has to have the same amount of molecules in every little pill, because you don't want your medication or your natural meds varying tremendously in the dosages. You want it to be steady, so if you adjust it upward, it's at the right dose. For example, I know my dose for Cardiovasc is to take 4 capsules twice a day. I need a whacking dosage. A smaller person, like a woman, might need 1 capsule 3 times a day, or a larger man, 2 capsules 3 times a day. I tend to like taking my pills twice a day, so I'll take 4 twice a day. and it works great for me. And I want to make sure my pills are consistent. So let's go through some more of the specific components and kind of explain what they do.
Sure. Well, we talked about Hawthorne, and by the way, just another little thing about our Hawthorne, it's European grown, and all these studies that have been done on Hawthorne have been done on the European grown product, not something that comes from Asia.
Right.
The other ingredient is garlic. We use an aged garlic extract, 1% allicin as the active marker compound.
Right. Yeah, and of course the aged garlic is going to be a natural ACE or angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, a natural killer of the nanobacteria in your artery walls and also the plaque around your teeth. Aged garlic, which is why it's a relative of Alamax Alamad. It also helps to boost your natural ability to get rid of heavy metals too. That's another aspect of it. And the Vitexin, which of course is in the Hawthorne, is a molecule. It's a cardiotonic, increases mitochondrial function and cardiac contractility and vascular peristaltic activity to move your blood around your body. So it does both, the heart and the blood vessels. What's the next component?
So the next component is the cayenne.
Cayenne, of course, is microcirculation, and it's a very powerful stimulant to microcirculation.
Yep, and then we've got the ginkgo.
Ginkgo improves perfusion, especially in the brain. And in fact, we actually have got some pretty good proof. This is the component. Unfortunately, the Canadian government cut it out of the Canadian version of the product. But the Cardiovasc has it because it's an American version. And if you want to rescue your brain, you have to maintain brain perfusion. This is what we talk about. Perfusion is the key. Right now, there's a study done called a SPECT scan, which actually looks at brain blood flow perfusion. And I think that if we use much more accurate perfusion technologies that can do like a whole body or an organ scan, it's a much better measure. So, as I say, Cardiovasc, every adult over 20 should be on it, even if you don't have blood pressure. Every person you want to prevent heart disease and you want to keep perfusing all your tissues. Any child with any illness should be on it, whether they have Down syndrome or juvenile rheumatoid arthritis or chronic asthma or cystic fibrosis. They should all be on it to maintain organ perfusion in the state to fight against disease. Because a perfused organ is a healthy organ. Another tagline.
Right on.
Take your Cardiovite, don't take the knockoffs. They're garbage, and they will not do the things that Cardiovasc will do. Stay right there, Fareed. I'll give you a time for our next visit. And back in a moment with hour number 3 with Tim Alexander.